The small-town murder that exposed a nationwide secret. Hit subscribe before this one gets buried, because some stories were never meant to see daylight. It was just after 2 a.m. on May 25, 2013, when the quiet town of Bardstown, Kentucky, stopped being quiet forever. Officer Jason Ellis, a 33-year-old police officer and father of two, had just finished his shift and was driving home in his patrol car. The road was empty, just the hum of his tires against the asphalt and the flicker of passing lights. He took the Bluegrass Parkway exit ramp, the same one he'd used 100 times before. But this time, something was different. A pile of freshly cut tree branches blocked the road. Not large enough to look like a fallen tree, but too neatly stacked to be an accident. Jason pulled over, radioed in that he'd clear the debris himself, and stepped out of his cruiser. The night was silent. No crickets, no cars, just the sound of wind brushing through the grass. As he began moving the branches, gunfire erupted from the darkness. Multiple shotgun blasts tore through the air. Officer Ellis was hit instantly. He never had time to draw his weapon. The shooter had been waiting, lying in ambush. When passing drivers found his body minutes later, his cruiser lights were still flashing against the trees, painting the highway in red and blue. His hand was resting on the ground beside his flashlight, its beam pointing toward the woods, as if still searching for his killer. For Bardstown, population barely 13,000, this was unthinkable. A police officer executed on an open road. No witnesses, no suspects, no answers. Detectives scoured the area but found almost nothing. No shell casings, no tire marks, no footprints. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. The cut branches had been deliberately placed to stop Ellis's car and force him out of his cruiser. P meant for a cop. At first, investigators thought it might be retaliation from someone he'd arrested. But as weeks passed, that theory began to fall apart. Ellis wasn't the kind of officer to make enemies. He was known as kind, honest, and devoted. The ambush didn't feel personal. It felt professional. The murder shook Bardstown to its core. Residents locked their doors for the first time in years. Officers patrolled in pairs, no longer trusting the shadows. And yet, as investigators dug deeper, whispers started to spread. That this killing wasn't random. That maybe Officer Ellis had stumbled onto something he shouldn't have. Just weeks before his death, Ellis had been assigned to a local narcotics task force, working to expose small-town drug routes connected to larger operations stretching across Kentucky. It was dangerous work. Some say he'd been asking questions about missing evidence from the police impound, and the timing of his death made people wonder if someone within the system wanted him silenced. But officially, the case went cold. Then, things got darker. In 2014, just 1 year later, Kathy and Samantha Netherland, a mother and teenage daughter, were brutally murdered in their Bardstown home. Kathy, a special education teacher, was shot multiple times. Samantha, only 16, was beaten and stabbed. There were no signs of forced entry, no robbery, nothing taken, except their lives. Two horrific crimes in the same small town, less than a year apart, and no arrests. The locals began whispering about a curse, but investigators were thinking something else, a pattern. The police chief at the time, Rick McCubbin, went on record saying, "Someone out there is killing our people, and they're still here." But behind the scenes, frustration grew. Evidence kept disappearing, leads were ignored. Detectives were rotated off the case without warning. In 2015, another tragedy. Crystal Rogers, a 35-year-old mother of 5, vanished without a trace. Her car was found abandoned on the side of Bluegrass Parkway, the same road where Officer Ellis was ambushed. Her keys, phone, and purse were still inside. She was never seen alive again. Bardstown's reputation began to collapse. The town, once known as the most beautiful small town in America, now had a new title, the most dangerous small town in America. Locals stopped cooperating with police. Some claimed law enforcement themselves were involved in the murders. Anonymous calls came in hinting at corruption, drug money, and cover-ups reaching far beyond Bardstown. It didn't help that Crystal Rogers' boyfriend, Brooks Houck, was quickly named a suspect, but never charged. He was connected to people with deep ties in the community, including law enforcement. His brother, a local officer, was fired after being accused of interfering with the investigation. Piece by piece, Bardstown's facade began to crumble. The FBI eventually stepped in, reopening every case tied to the town. Ellis, the Netherlands, Rogers, and even the mysterious disappearance of Crystal's father, Tommy Ballard, who was shot and killed while hunting on his own property a year after his daughter vanished. The message was clear. Anyone who got close to the truth ended up dead. But what no one could have predicted was that Bardstown's secrets would soon reach far beyond Kentucky, linking to a network of narcotics trafficking, stolen evidence, and police corruption that spread across multiple states. As night fell over Bardstown once again, the memorial for Officer Jason Ellis still stood at the highway exit. A single candle flickered in the wind beside a wooden cross marked End of Watch, May 25, 2013. And beneath the surface of that small-town charm, the truth was beginning to rot. Because what started with one murder was about to uncover a nationwide secret. When the FBI arrives in Bardstown, Kentucky, they didn't come quietly. Agents in dark suits stepped into the Nelson County Sheriff's Office with a single message: "We're reopening everything." For years, the murders of Officer Jason Ellis, the Netherland family, Crystal Rogers, and Tommy Ballard had been considered separate, tragedies stacked atop each other, but by 2018, it was impossible to ignore the pattern. Each victim had either worked in, investigated, or stumbled close to something much bigger, a network of drug trafficking and corruption buried beneath Bardstown's small-town surface. And as the Bureau dug deeper, the walls began to shake. In 2013, months before Jason Ellis's murder, state and federal agents were already tracking an illegal drug pipeline running through central Kentucky. It wasn't just local dealers. It was a coordinated operation moving meth, oxycodone, and fentanyl from Mexico through small rural towns. Bardstown was a quiet pass-through, until Ellis joined the Narcotics Task Force. Detectives later learned that Ellis had been investigating missing evidence, specifically confiscated drugs that vanished from police storage. Some of that evidence had reappeared on the streets, sold back into circulation. Internal reports hinted that someone inside the department might have been protecting dealers in exchange for cash. Weeks later, Ellis was dead. The FBI couldn't prove it immediately, but as one retired agent later said, Jason's murder was the spark that illuminated the rot. Fast forward to 2014, the Netherland murders. Kathy and her daughter Samantha didn't fit the pattern of drug-related killings. Kathy was a schoolteacher, but digital forensics revealed that days before her murder, she had received an anonymous call from a burner phone traced back to the same tower near where Ellis was killed. Coincidence? Maybe. But investigators noticed another connection. Kathy's husband, who had died years before, had once worked at the local prison system, where several former guards were later linked to the same drug routes Ellis had been investigating. Someone had been cleaning house. By the time Crystal Rogers went missing in July 2015, the town had become a storm of rumors and fear. Crystal had been dating Brooks Houck, a well-known real estate developer. Her friends said she'd grown suspicious, claiming Brooks knew people in law enforcement and had been acting nervous about stuff at work. When Crystal's car was found abandoned on Bluegrass Parkway, just miles from where Officer Ellis had been murdered, the symbolism was impossible to ignore. Her keys, purse, and phone lay inside, untouched. Brooks was questioned but never arrested. His brother, Nick Houck, a Bardstown police officer, was accused of warning Brooks that investigators were coming, and then refusing to cooperate with the state police. He was fired but never charged. The deeper the FBI looked, the more it appeared Bardstown had a circle of silence. People in power protecting one another, connected through favors, family ties, and fear. No one pursued the truth harder than Tommy Ballard, Crystal's father. For over a year, he searched every field, creek, and back road for his daughter. He printed flyers, organized community searches, and refused to be intimidated, even when unmarked vehicles began following him at night. Then, on November 19, 2016, Tommy was shot in the chest while hunting on his own property. The bullet came from long range, a precision shot. His gun was never fired. The shooter was never found. The Ballard family called it a message. Stop asking questions. In 2020, the FBI officially opened a full-scale investigation into the Bardstown cases. Forensic analysts began re-examining evidence long thought lost, including shell fragments from Ellis's murder and data from phones linked to known drug traffickers. They uncovered digital ties between a criminal network operating out of Nelson and Marion counties and law enforcement officers who had either gone silent, transferred, or quietly resigned. The same people believed to have information about drug routes had ties to individuals connected to the Ellis and Rogers investigations. It wasn't just one murder anymore, it was a web. FBI field reports described the Bardstown region as a nexus of corruption, where criminal enterprises thrived under the cover of small-town normalcy. One chilling line from the report read, "Evidence suggests an organized effort to suppress investigations involving both narcotics and homicide cases connected to current and former law enforcement personnel." After years of silence, in 2023, the unthinkable happened. Brooks Houck, Crystal Rogers' former boyfriend, was arrested and charged with her murder. The announcement sent shockwaves through Bardstown. For nearly a decade, Crystal's disappearance had been the town's darkest secret. Her body still hasn't been found, but prosecutors said they had enough, including digital records, witness statements, and cell tower data, to prove that Houck was responsible. Even more shocking, sources close to the investigation claimed the FBI was looking into whether Houck's connections inside local law enforcement helped delay his arrest. For many in Bardstown, it confirmed what they'd long suspected. The corruption wasn't just rumor, it was real. Today, Bardstown still wears its pain like a scar. The memorials for Ellis, the Netherlands, and the Ballards still stand, flickering candles at the edges of dark backroads. And while one arrest finally brought a glimmer of justice, residents know there's still more buried beneath. One retired officer who worked the original case told reporters, "The truth isn't fully out yet. What we've seen is just the tip of what Jason Ellis died for." The story of Bardstown isn't just about one town, it's about how murkiness can hide behind the charm of small-town America, and how one officer's death peeled back the layers of a network that reached far beyond Kentucky. A murder that began with cut tree branches on an exit ramp ended up exposing something far bigger, a nationwide secret about how power, corruption, and silence can thrive right under the surface. Because in Bardstown, Kentucky, the night Officer Ellis died wasn't the end of a story. It was the beginning of America's most chilling small-town mystery, one that still isn't over.